Hey everybody, so this week we are making larb. Larb is a Thai dish, so a dish from Thailand. It actually happens to be one of my favorites. I have very fond memories of eating larb in San Francisco with my father. So this recipe comes, as all of them do, out of the Cultural Night Cookbook. And we're going to be making larb. I'm going to be making chicken larb instead of beef or pork, because that happens to be what I had around the house. All right, to make larb, you're going to need about a pound of some kind of ground meat. As I said, I'm using ground chicken because that's what I had. Pork and beef are pretty standard ones to use. A little trick is if you don't happen to have ground beef around the house, you can always cut it up very finely with a knife, so cutting it as small as possible. I actually ground mine in my grinder, but you know, either one of those works. Along with the meat, you're going to need 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. I happen to like garlic, so I'm going to do 3 cloves. You need to have either 5 shallots or a small red onion or purple onion. I got a small purple onion. It was a little cheaper, a little quicker. They are going to have a different flavor profile, so mine's going to taste different than if I made this with shallots, but that's okay. You need, as well as those, you need some Thai chilies. Now, Thai chilies are very small and extremely spicy, so I'm actually going to be using jalapenos. Jalapenos are easy to find. They're not as spicy, but if you want to be as authentic as possible, then you should be using Thai bird chilies. You need 5 green onions. Green onions are mainly comprised of the green part up at the top. You can go all the way down. The further down this way you get, the more astringent the flavor gets. I'm going to be using just the tops of mine. You need some mint. This happens to be mint from my garden, so it's a very special mint to me. You need cilantro. You need 2 limes. As always with food, you need salt. For Thai dishes, there's a special ingredient that you almost always need, which is fish sauce. So this is fish sauce. Fish sauce is a byproduct of fermenting fish, technically. It is used in all Thai dishes and is extremely important to Thai cuisine. You also are going to need basil. Now basil, there's actually a Thai basil. This just is a good old Italian basil that I happen to have growing on my windowsill. So basil is that last ingredient. So I'm going to kind of go through the mise en place. So if you don't know what mise en place means, it's French. It means everything in its place. And I'm going to go through all these different ingredients and I'm going to get them ready for cooking. Because before I cook anything with any dish, I want to make sure that everything is ready to go. So we're going to start by doing the onion. Now onions have 2 sides to them. They have a papery side here, that's what goes up and it grows above, and then they have the hairy side, which is the root. So when you're cutting an onion, this one's done in slices, and there's a couple of ways to do this. My personal favorite is you get right on top, about halfway down, just cut the onion in half, and then cut off this end here, and then you're gonna peel them. All right, as always, it's good to have a little bowl set aside nearby so that you can put away your scraps. Well, there's a couple ways you could do this next part because you're gonna be slicing these. You could leave it the way it is with the hairy bits on and then slice down. I'm gonna do mine a little different because I want mine very thin. I'm gonna cut off the end here. And then I'm gonna do something called a julienne. So I'm actually gonna come in kind of at an angle like this. And what that does is that cuts very, very fine onion cuts, and it gives me a very nice small onion cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up this onion. All right, so I'm gonna set these aside. Now, one thing to remember with onions at all times is that onions release a chemical from inside their skin that reacts with human eyes and causes you to tear up. There are ways to get around that. If you leave your onion in the fridge overnight, it'll get colder and that release of chemicals will be a lot less, so you'll have a lot less tears. You can also wear, they make these special goggles that are onion goggles, or you could just go really fast. The faster you go, the less time you have to get those chemicals in your eyes. So speaking of onions, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna go next to the green onions. So these are green onions. We're gonna be cutting them at 1-inch lengths. I'm actually gonna cut these on a bias. So a bias means at an angle. I'm gonna cut off the tips here because those often get a little bit old, but I'm gonna come in, instead of cutting straight up and down, I'm gonna cut this angle. That helps in a couple of ways, makes them a little more consistent across the cut, makes them a little bit more fancy looking, they taste a little bit better. There we go. Nice and simple and quick with those. After I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and tackle my pepper. I know for a lot of us, peppers are scary because peppers are spicy and jalapenos are no different. Thai bird chilies are much hotter than a jalapeno. But there is a little trick. So the chemical in a pepper that makes it spicy is something called capsaicin. The capsaicin is throughout the entire pepper, but it is most prominent in this part right here. This membrane right here is where that capsaicin lives. So if I cut my jalapeno in half, you can see I have that membrane and I have these seeds. Well, what I want to do is I want to get rid of that. So I'm actually going to dig it out. I'm going to dig out all of that membrane. I'm going to use a spoon to do it. Just kind of curl my way around here and cut it down. And what this will do is for people who don't handle spice as well, or if you're cooking for a family with kids, which is always a concern, like I have, it makes the dish a little less spicy, makes it a little easier for people to handle. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my next one, and I am not going to touch my face for a while. As you see, capsaicin is an oil, and so it's on my fingers and stuck to my hands. And if I was to touch my face right now, as I have discovered in horribly bad ways in the past, it burns your eyes real bad. So you don't want to touch your face until you've had a chance to wash them. So since we're going to be mashing these in mortar and pestle later, I'm going to cut them up into small slices. So I'm just going to make some strips like that of all of them. And then I'm going to line up the strips and I'm going to make tiny little dices. Now, since I'm going to be putting these through a processor or through a mortar and pestle, I don't need to worry about them being super equal in size because I'm going to be busting them up a bunch. I just want them to be pretty close. So I'll set those aside into a different bowl than the one that I did my onions into, because these need to be handled differently. So I got my little bowl ready, just gonna drop those right in there. Now, because Thai bird chilies are so small, it's possible that I have more jalapeno than I need. But jalapeno is less spicy than a Thai bird chili, so they're going to be a little bit easier to handle anyways. All right, garlic. Again, since I'm going to be mashing this up, I don't need to make it as pretty as I usually would, but there are a couple tricks to working with garlic. One easy thing to do is to stick it into a jar, shake it. That'll get this papery kind of outside. There it is. Paper kind of outside off. I've never had a problem with it. I'm just gonna take the flat of my hand like this, put it on top, and just give it a nice heavy crush. This does a couple of things. It separates the paper from the inside of the garlic. It also starts releasing oils. There are oils inside the garlic that give it its garlicky flavor. So I want that out there. So I'm gonna go ahead, take off the skins. I'm gonna set this up for a good dicing. So I'm gonna get just some fine slices here. Oh, and then I'm gonna get it all in a pile. And I'm just gonna go back over it again. Now, if I was making a dish where the garlic was not being crushed up later, I would take a lot of time here. Get these really small and all the same size. But since I'm going to be grinding in a mortar and pestle, I don't need to do that. Just like we've done in the past where we've used food processors. It's not as essential if you know that you're going to be busting it up later. So let me grab that and just slide that into my bowl with my jalapenos, because those are going to go together. Now, cilantro is a type of herb used around most of the world. I'm gonna need a half a cup of it. So I'm gonna get a half cup measure up. And while I'm at it, I'm also gonna grab a quarter cup measure because I know I'm gonna need that later. And then I'm gonna take a look at my half cup measure and I'm gonna kind of figure out about how much I need. Now, I don't want the stem part of it. I really just want the leaf part of it because the stem part is just gonna be woody. It's not gonna taste great. So I'm just gonna go through and just peel off some leaves. Now, there is a neat little fast trick to this if you happen to have it around. I'll show you that in a second using a colander. So colander, of course, is the thing you use to strain water out of pasta or potatoes or anything to strain water out of. It also happens to have a bunch of little tiny holes. So if I take my cilantro and I slip it through one of those holes, like so, and I pull it, pop, there we go. There's my leaves pulled off. So that is a quicker way to get your cilantro out. Let me just check where I'm at. How much have I gotten so far? Let's see. You'll see That was about a quarter, so I need a little bit more than that, so just a couple more leaves. So I'll go ahead and grab those. And there we go. That is my half a cup of cilantro. So I'm gonna take the rest of my cilantro and I'm gonna set it aside. The best way to keep cilantro is to keep it in a jar with a little bit of water on your countertop where it will get some sunlight. Cilantro is an extremely useful herb. As I said before, they use it in Spanish cooking, they use it in a lot of Indian cooking, a lot of different kinds of cooking use cilantro. So basil, there is a difference between Thai basil and Italian basil. Let me put that in a bowl. But it's not a big enough difference that I'm going to worry about it for this particular dish. But basil is one of those herbs that you should have. So it says torn, so I'm just gonna tear it. Again, what this does is release some of those internal flavors, some of those oils out of the leaf. I'm only gonna take 2 bunches, I think. Just rip them up like this and put them into my quarter cup measure. Make sure I got enough. It's a quarter cup of basil. Drop it in there. Notice that the basil is irregularly shaped at this point. This is my mint plant. Mint is a great plant. Everyone should grow a mint plant. They are voracious. They grow forever. I had a mint plant that I traveled between 2 parts of Spokane with, and it lived the entire time. In fact, by the time we actually took it out of the pot that it was in, it had grown so large that the pot was no longer full of dirt. It was full of mint root. It was quite impressive. Biggest ball of root I've ever seen in my life. Tear that up, check how good I'm doing. This is not that mint plant. That mint plant, by the time I had to pull it out, was very old and lacking a lot of the nutrients it needed, specifically because it had lost all of the dirt in the pot. If I had transplanted it sooner, I probably would have been able to keep it. There's all my herbs. All right, and the last thing we gotta kind of prep ahead of time is our limes. So it's very simple with a lime. We're gonna just be squeezing these. I'm just gonna cut them in half and kind of set them aside. So this is that process we call mise en place. And what this does for me is this really gets me ready to cook, because what I'm gonna be doing next is cooking my turkey, and I'm going to be adding things in kind of rapid fire succession. This is especially important when we look at the cooking vessel we're going to use, which is something called a wok. But what I've got here is I've got everything just ready to go. I just have to throw it in and start cooking, and as soon as I do that, I can just throw in the next thing, and have everything ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get my wok set up, and then I'll show you how to cook with a wok. So we're going to take this, before we go over and cook, I almost forgot, and we're going to make a little paste. So we're going to use something called a mortar and pestle. Now I don't have a mortar and pestle. A lot of people don't. It's a very specialized older tool. You could do this in a food processor, but my food processor is quite large, so I'm not going to go that route. So what a mortar and pestle literally is it's just a stoneware bowl and a stoneware like club, and you're going to be pushing and pressing. Now, if you don't have one, you can use the back end of a wooden spoon. I'm going to be using this. This is called a muddler to do mine. And what you're going to be doing is you're just going to be pressing in and kind of moving it around, and you're going to be releasing all those oils, all that juice, all of that stuff out of these things, and you're going to be combining them together into a paste. I added salt to this. The salt helps in this process. It helps to pull the liquid out of the vegetables as you crush them, which makes the paste happen a little quicker. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this. And while I do this, I'm gonna speed it up so you don't have to watch me do it in slow motion. Ooh, one more thing before I forget. You may have noticed that in the recipe, it says 5 whole Thai bird chilies, or Thai chilies. If you were to put 5 whole Thai chilies into here and you were to muddle them up with your garlic, you would get all of that seeds and all of that capsaicin into your mix, which would make your food a lot spicier. Thai food does tend towards being spicy. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying think about your tolerance level. If you can handle a lot of spice, go for it the traditional way. If you can't, take a break, pull out a different chili, cut out the seeds. Or even use the Thai chilies and cut out the seeds and the inner side, the pith. If you do that, you're going to get less heat and still get the flavor. You can see it's already starting to turn a little bit pasty as that liquid comes out. All right, so I'm gonna go back to mashing. I think that'll just about do it for now. This will get cooked in a little bit, though not a lot, because it's added towards the end of the cook. But there you go. That is my sort of paste. Other dishes that use a mortar and pestle traditionally include things like pesto. And really all a mortar and pestle requires is time and strength. It takes a little bit of effort to do it, and it takes quite a bit of time to really get it down to where you want it to be. Mine's where I want it to be, and so I'm gonna go ahead and cook. All right, so this is a wok. So a wok is an Asian style cooking pan. They're rounded, they have to sit on a base to be used. My wok is extremely old, but what they do is they produce a lot of heat down at the base and not much on the sides. So when you cook with a wok, what you're able to do is you're able to cook things in the middle and then kind of push them off to the side. You can make this dish, of course, with anything. It doesn't actually matter, according to the recipe. I just like a wok when I make Asian food. So some kind of neutral oil. Neutral oil means it doesn't provide a lot of flavor. I happen to like grapeseed oil for that. There's also avocado oil. You could also use canola and other oils. And you just want to let that get hot. You're going to be browning your meat next. So browning creates something that they call a Maillard reaction, and it just creates kind of a hard skin on the outside, which allows the meat to gain more flavor. That should be good. I'm going to hit this, and what I want to hear is I want to hear it sizzle as soon as it hits the pan. Just like that. You'll notice that my pan got hot really fast. One of the things with cooking in a wok, and this is why it was so important that you have your mise en place over here all finished, is because a wok cooks food very, very quickly. So you want to make sure that you get there. I'm going to spread this out and I'm going to leave it so it can start browning on the bottom. Now in the recipe it said we're going to add our onions and then turn off the heat. I want my onions a little cooked. I'm not sure if that's traditional, but especially since I'm using red onions and not shallots, I'm going to add it in a little bit early and kind of cook it down, just a little bit, for flavor and for what I want to do with it. And then I'm going to kind of go from there, so it's going to be pretty quick. So I'll be hitting it with the onions and the herbs all at once. I'll let my onions kind of cook down a little bit. I might throw in the onions a little bit early since I'm planning on cooking them down. And then once everything is kind of settled, I will turn off the heat and I will add my chilies and my garlic to that, as well as my fish oil, mix all that in, or fish sauce, sorry. And then I'm gonna hit it with some fresh lime juice, and that's pretty much it. That's all it takes to make this dish once you get going with it. So let's see. Chicken's cooking nicely. I'm gonna add my onions now. As I said, this may not be traditional, but for me in particular, I want to have a nice, onion flavor, and red onions are a little astringent, so I want to cook out a little bit of that astringency. Astringent means it's a little harsh. Hit your tongue a little strong. Plus, I got kids who don't like onions, and when you cook an onion, it becomes sweeter. So the sweeter onions will help them want to eat this a little bit more. So I've been cooking for about 2 to 3 minutes. You can see the onions have gotten a little limper, a little more translucent. I could keep going if I wanted to, but I'm going to stop there. I'm going to add in my herbs. So just a reminder, I have mint, I have basil, and I have cilantro. Now, the herbs are what make this dish really what it is, the onions and the herbs. The meat, this almost is a salad, effectively. And the meat is kind of there, but it's, it's there. Now in the recipe it says to do this when the heat is off. I want to cook this out as well a little bit. Same reason I wanted to cook out my onions, just make it a little less astringent. And probably not being extremely traditional here, and I'm sure Miss Cat at the office, whose recipe this is, will be unhappy with how I'm doing it, but I also know my children and I'm trying to cook to make it something that they will actually finish. I'm just gonna let that cook for a little bit. Garlic, and peppers cook really, really fast. When they're a paste form like that, they're gonna cook extremely fast. And you can see it's starting to look less like just a mash of chicken than onions. It's actually starting to look like a dish. All right, and now I add in my 4 limes. Just give them a good squeeze. Limes typically don't have seeds in them, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're going to be doing like a lemon, lemons have seeds, and you should do it over the top of your hand. Please, if you've cut yourself and you're squeezing a lemon over the top of your hand, wear a glove. It hurts when lemon juice gets into your hand because it's acid. This acid will really brighten this up. Let me turn the heat off. Give it a nice kind of bright flavor. This makes a very nice summery dish, especially if you eat it served as a lettuce wrap, which is one of the suggestions. We're gonna have ours over brown rice because we like brown rice in this house. And then the nice funk that is fish sauce. If you don't have fish sauce, it's not really a Thai dish. It doesn't take a lot. It is a very funky thing. And there. And that is larb. Now, one thing that you should always do when you are cooking is taste your food. So I'm just going to get a quick taste of all of this together. Really good, nice and bright. And add just a little bit more salt. So I like extremely seasoned things. The fish sauce actually adds some salt to it as well. And there we go. Nice notes of the lime, nice taste of that chili and garlic in there. It's a very, very delicious dish. So please make larb, send me your pictures. Do it with pork, do it with chicken, do it with beef, do it with goat if you want to, as we are going to keep pushing goat on this show. And I will see you guys next week when we cook something new. Bye.